So let's talk about the biggest deal you've ever made, even if you don't remember signing up for it. It's the deal we all have with the state. We follow the rules, we pay our taxes, and in exchange, we get things like protection and order. But what's really going on with this arrangement? What's the true price of that protection? Today, we're going to unpack that fundamental trade-off we all make with the government. And to kick things off, I want to take you back to a classic story, one that I think perfectly sets the stage for the question we're digging into. It's all about a very generous offer from a very powerful group.
If you're a fan of old-school sci-fi, you know this line. It's an all-timer from a legendary episode of The Twilight Zone. The story goes like this. These giant aliens, the Conomots, show up on Earth, they stop wars, they cure diseases, they basically solve all our problems. And as a gift, they leave behind a book. The title? To Serve Man.
Of course, the horrifying twist is the book isn't about public service. It's a collection of recipes for cooking humans. It's a super powerful metaphor, right? When any powerful entity promises to serve you, you have to ask, what's the catch? So before we get to the potential costs, let's first look at the incredible benefits that are actually on the table. What does the government promise to do for us?
So what is the core deal we make with the government? You know, when you strip everything else away, it comes down to a really simple, really ancient exchange. Let's take a look at that foundational promise.
This quote from a history text just nails it. This is the bargain of civilization, going back thousands of years. We give up some of our stuff, our resources, our food, eventually our money, and a little bit of our freedom. And in return, we get security. We get a stable society where we can actually live our lives and hopefully do well. That's the trade.
And check this out. This is that promise in action, just in a more modern context. During the Cold War, the big fear was nuclear war. So what does the government do? It steps in and gives people actual plans, a how-to guide for protecting their families. It's basically the 20th century version of building a castle wall to protect the village. But okay, it's not just about building walls or bunkers. Having this big centralized state allows for some absolutely incredible achievements. I mean, think about the Roman Empire building aqueducts that carried water for miles and roads that are still around today. No single person or small group could ever pull that off. It takes a government to organize projects on that kind of society-changing scale.
Now, to rocket that idea into the modern era, look at this number. Way back in 1993, the NSA had a supercomputer called Barney that could perform 2.67 billion operations a second. This thing was so powerful it had to be liquid-cooled so it wouldn't literally melt. That's the kind of mind-blowing technological leap that's really only possible when you have the massive, centralized resources of a government behind you.
All right, so the benefits are pretty clear, right? Protection from harm and progress on a scale we couldn't imagine otherwise. But all that power comes with a price tag. And that's where we get into how this promise builds itself into this enormous, complicated, and, yeah, very expensive machine.
And here's the fundamental risk. The very system that we create to serve us can, well, start serving itself. This quote points to a problem seen in almost any huge organization. It can start to focus more on its own survival, its own growth, and its own power, sometimes forgetting about the mission it was created for in the first place.
And if you want to see the scale of that machine today, here it is. According to data from Open the Books, this is the total planned U.S. government spending for 2024. It's a number so huge our brains can't really even process it. And it represents the unbelievable amount of resources, all funded by taxpayers, by the way, that it takes to keep the modern state running. Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. This slide breaks down a kind of split personality the government has. When it buys something, it's not just a customer. On one hand, it's a buyer, trying to get a good deal. But on the other hand, it's also the sovereign, the ruler, and it uses its buying power to push other public policies.
So what does that mean in the real world? It means that all those extra rules, the sovereign part, make doing business with the government incredibly complicated and expensive. These rules might be for good reasons, to promote social goals, but they force companies to jump through a ton of administrative hoops. And guess what? All those extra costs get passed right back to the government and ultimately the taxpayer as higher prices.
And this chart really puts a number on it. It shows you just how big that burden is. One study found that for a lot of companies, the administrative cost, just the paperwork and compliance of selling something to the government, was more than 5 times higher than selling the exact same product on the open market. 5 times.
So we've got this constant tension, right? We kind of need this state for the big stuff, protection, major projects, but it comes with this massive, inefficient, and costly bureaucracy.
Which naturally makes you wonder, is this the only way? Are there other ways for us to organize ourselves? Let's explore some really fascinating alternatives that are starting to pop up.
Okay, I know this sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi novel, but the technology is actually here. The big idea is using tools like the blockchain, which is just a super secure shared digital ledger, to create entirely new kinds of communities. These so-called virtual nations aren't based on a piece of land, but on people voluntarily agreeing to a set of rules, with their own digital laws and even their own money.
And this table just lays out the difference so clearly. We're talking about a move from the top-down, centralized power that we're all used to a decentralized, networked model. It's a huge shift from a system of governance based on where you happen to be born to one based on the rules you actively choose to live by.
And it's not just new structures. We're also talking about powerful new tools. Think about artificial general intelligence, AGI. That's AI with human-level thinking. This could completely revolutionize how governments work. I mean, imagine being able to simulate the real-world effects of a policy before you pass it, or creating a totally transparent system that watches for corruption, or even analyzing the opinions of every single citizen to make decisions that truly reflect what people want. So, this is where we land. We've seen the ancient promise of the state, this deal for protection, and we've seen the massive bureaucratic machine it's become. But now technology is throwing some wild new ideas into the mix, which leaves us with a really fascinating question for the future. Are the rules that govern us going to keep being written in dusty old law books or on a brand new blockchain?